Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today we are going to be doing a tea time chat about cruelty-free makeup. Thank you so very much for joining me. This channel is all about eyeshadow palettes, essence and couture reviews, and getting the use out of my makeup. And once a month I like to come on here to have like a chat about a very often makeup related topic, just to see, just to tell you where I stand, where I'm coming from, or maybe try answering some questions that I sometimes get in the comments or things that I see going on in the beauty community. And today I thought we could chat about cruelty-free makeup, because sometimes I do get questions about why I don't promote my channel as being cruelty-free, or that I don't make more of an effort to try and be 100% cruelty-free, for instance. And I have my reasons for doing that, so that's what today's video is going to cover. And in case you've never seen one of my videos, perhaps it's good to know that my makeup preferences are very greatly skewed by the fact that I have a fair skin tone with a cool to neutral undertone, and because I have been buying, trying, and reviewing makeup and skincare for more than a decade. I have very, very particular favorites, and I know what I like. So yeah, if you would like to join me for the ride and join the Snow Angel Club, then definitely click subscribe down below. Tea time chat about being cruelty-free, all that. Before we get to that, this is the tea. It's not that strong yet. This takes a little while for it to steep, but this is the Puka Vanilla Chai Tea, which is my favorite fall tea. It's really, really nice. It does get a little bit darker, but because it's more like spices than actual tea, it always takes a little bit for it to really look like a proper cup of tea. So yeah, I just got it because I think we're gonna be in for a chatty video for sure. But that's the tea that I'm drinking. So yeah, this channel I've never promoted as being a particular thing. Not cruelty-free or any other labels, which we will go over in a second. I've never felt comfortable with making such a bold claim as I'm gonna go cruelty-free, and I definitely think like a couple of years ago it was very trending to go cruelty-free, and whenever you would watch a declutter video, you would say, people would start like getting rid of makeup because it wasn't cruelty-free. And then you would just see people like, I'm going to get rid of this brand completely because they're not cruelty-free, etc., etc. And I always have felt sort of on the fence about the whole cruelty-free statements that some people make. Some people do it really well, and I have no issues with their channels. But there are also just people who started doing cruelty-free channels just for the sake of, the trend or the hype or whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but I really feel it was a thing to like very boldly announce like, I'm going cruelty-free and I'm going to make this big, huge change. Like a couple of years ago, it was very much the thing to do. And what you are seeing is that a lot of those channels have also sort of veered more towards, being less strong of an advocate for that. So before we get to the nitty-gritty like topic of trying to answer like why is this channel not cruelty-free, I want to discuss with you what cruelty-free actually means. And then answering the question, when is makeup then cruelty-free? What cruelty-free is definitely not. We need to talk about China. I know, it's not going to get super political, trust me. I want to talk about greenwashing. Oh yes. And then I want to talk to you about actually why it is that I'm not cruelty-free and sort of like the issues that I have with that. So let me start with the first topic here, which is, what does it mean to go cruelty-free? So I think there is also a very big misunderstanding about what the term cruelty-free actually means and can mean. I think it's a far more limited than what a lot of people assume it actually means. So cruelty-free makeup just refers to the fact that it's not tested on animals. That's it. Not tested on animals. That's the only reason, the only stretch of the definition of cruelty-free. So everything else, it is not going to be. So cruelty-free makeup is not tested on animals, so it does not have to be vegan. A product can be cruelty-free but contain animal products. Cruelty-free means not tested on animals, which means that cruelty-free makeup does not mean that it was produced sustainably at all. So those are all different claims that producers of makeup can make. But if they say they're cruelty-free, the only thing it means that they have been, that they have avoided animal testing for their products. And you have organizations and also blogs and websites who keep track of which brands are and aren't cruelty-free. A lot of packaging will sometimes have a little bunny on it, and then it's sometimes Leaping Bunny approved. That's an organization who keeps track of these things, sort of almost like a trademark. But at this moment, as I'm talking about it and sitting here and telling you about this, I'm not entirely sure whether that's an actual like trademark kind of thing, or whether it's what you also see very often in supermarkets, is that, the brands don't have to do a lot to get that to be Leaping Bunny approved, for instance. So I don't know what length the process brand have to go through in order to get such a, being able to claim that they are cruelty free. I'm not exactly sure what goes into it, but I do know, for instance, in the food industry, the amount that producers of food have to do to claim that something is healthier, let's just say it's a very, very slippery slope. So I know that, for instance, here in the Netherlands, we have like a blue tick and a green tick, whether something is like a better choice or not. And in order to get that thing on your packaging, you only have to reduce either sugar, fat, or something else with like so much %, and then you can already claim that your product is healthier, while it's going to do pretty much exactly the same thing. So I'm not sure whether that also applies to, brands being able to claim that they are cruelty free, and that is also going to tap into one of the other topics I want to get to. So let's then talk about, when is makeup cruelty free? What are some of the things that I have heard when it comes to makeup being cruelty free? So yes, cruelty free is a label you can use if your product has not been tested on animals. But this is where things get really, really like gray right off the bat, because brands can be cruelty free, but if they are owned by another company, let's say Too Faced as an example. Too Faced as a brand has been cruelty free from the start of the brand. They've been cruelty free all the time. However, Too Faced was bought by Estee Lauder, and Estee Lauder as a mother company is not cruelty free per se. But Too Faced as a brand is. So how cruelty free do you want to be as a channel, as a consumer? Do you want to buy from Too Faced because they are cruelty free, or are you not going to buy from them because they are owned by a larger corporation that isn't necessarily cruelty free? This also goes for L'Oreal. And if you, I think Kelly Gooch did a really good video where she traced where all of the beauty brands come from. At the end of the day, a lot of makeup brands are owned by like what? 5 really big conglomerations? So if you're saying you're cruelty free and you also want like the entire chain to be cruelty free of how the brand is owned, and no makeup goes through to cruelty free makeup, and none of your money goes to non-cruelty free brands, that's what I'm trying to say, then yeah, let's just say that's again a very slippery slope, because you can hardly verify that it is. So what you see just a lot of people do is saying, okay, Too Faced is cruelty free, so I can still buy Too Faced, but I'm not buying MAC because MAC is not cruelty free. That's what you sort of see most people doing. Another reason why determining whether something is actually cruelty free, I already touched upon it. There are websites and people who keep track of whether brands are cruelty free or not. And again, the parameters for when something is cruelty free can be very difficult. Another thing that you should know, and I'm not sure if I'm saying this correctly, but I believe Jen Love's Reviews actually like really dug around in this, and also figured out that actually nowadays, because products consist of ingredients, and you can also argue, well, is something still cruelty free if out of a 20 ingredient list, one thing has been tested on an animal? Is it then still cruelty free or not? And so one of the workarounds that brands can have is the product itself. This cup of tea is not tested on animals, but something that's in the tea baggie, one of the ingredients, might. But because the product has not been tested on animals, brands can say that it's cruelty-free. Now, granted, apparently historically, a lot of ingredients no longer deserve animal testing, as in it's no longer needed. We have other ways of doing it, so it doesn't happen that often anymore. But in terms of something being cruelty-free, it's just a very sort of like, it seems like something very clear-cut, like, oh, it's cruelty-free, it's not tested on animals. But there's a lot of workarounds that you can work with, or like other things that might happen in the chain of how brands are owned and how the makeup industry just functions and what they're allowed to put on packaging. And it makes it very difficult to actually determine as a single consumer whether a product is cruelty-free or not. So next up, I want to touch upon what cruelty-free then is not, because we discussed that the term cruelty-free is not as clear-cut as it might be, but that also means that cruelty-free has its limitations to what it can actually do. So cruelty-free does not mean that the product is clean. I find clean makeup, I find it a very difficult term, but I'll explain to you in a minute. It doesn't mean there are no chemicals that have been used or that it's good for the environment. It has nothing to do with how sustainable the supply chain is from factory to the product arriving at your doorstep. It has nothing to do with how environmentally the packaging is, whether people are paid fair wages. It has nothing to do with that. And it has nothing to do with whether a product is vegan. I already mentioned it before. A product can be cruelty-free, but still contain beeswax. So do with that what you wish, but cruelty-free is a very, very, very small sliver of the pie, which is one of the reasons actually why I feel very uncomfortable when people say, ooh, my channel is cruelty-free. I'm like, are you really? Because very often people don't define what cruelty-free means for them. And I think that you need to sort of explain that every single time you film a video in order to figure that out. But yeah, I mentioned that I find, for instance, the term of clean beauty, which is really like a trend these recent years. You have these brands who claim to be clean beauty brands. You know, they're free from parabens or whatever it is that they have going on. They're very often also cruelty-free. But what anyone can, like, clean makeup is not an official term. It just isn't. Clean beauty products do not exist. And I'm going to tell you a bit of an example here, a bit of an anecdote. I think about a decade ago, there was this trend of clean skincare products in the Dutch beauty blogging community. A lot of bloggers were promoting like shorter ingredient lists. It had to be natural products. If you can't understand the ingredient on the ingredient list, it's bad for you. That whole thing, like no chemicals, no nothing like that. So I got sort of sucked into that. And then I bought a product which was literally water and aloe vera. It was an aloe vera face gel that was supposed to be super hydrating, and people were raving about this organic, that's another term that cruelty-free has nothing to do with, organic brand. It's the worst skin reaction I've ever had on a skincare product. I returned it to store going in with like nothing but a red rash along my jawline. And it's the worst skin reaction I've ever had to a skincare products. It was 2 ingredients, it was organic, it was clean, it had the shortest ingredient list I've ever seen, and it didn't work for me. So this is why whenever I get comments also on skincare reviews that I write over on my blogs, when people say like, yeah, well, dummy, of course it wasn't going to work because your product that you're reviewing contains so-and-so. And I'm like, no. It all comes down to formulation. Whether a product is going to work for you, especially with skincare, it really boils down to how all those ingredients come together and how it also sits in a component, like is it exposed to air or not. And that's what my sensitive skin is. I need that kind of information much more than just looking at an ingredient list and going like, oh, it contains this and that. Oh, it's unless you have an actual allergy test that says your skin is allergic to. But I personally don't have that test, and I've never been able to figure out what I'm responding to. So whatever the claims are that brands put on their products, I've just learned that I have to be very skeptical, not just because it's cruelty-free or whatever claims there can be. And I want my products to just also work for me. I want things to work, to blend well, to sit nicely on the skin, to not give me skin irritations. And we'll get in a minute to why I find that so important and why it makes it more difficult to claim as a big neon sign on this channel is cruelty-free. So let me unpack why. All of the reasons why I struggle making such a bold claim as saying, I'm going cruelty-free because this is what I care about. And the main reason why brands are often labeled as not being cruelty-free is because they sell in continental China. Now, this is a whole thing. It's politics, but something you should know about me personally is that I live in the Netherlands. I live in the European Union, and the European Union has laws that nothing, makeup, beauty, any product sold in this part of the world can be tested on animals. I'm not sure whether the legislation has changed recently, but as far as I know, any product I buy within continental Europe, if it's in the European Union, any product I buy is cruelty-free. Because it's not been tested on animals. Because in my part of the world, animal testing is just not a thing. Now, apparently this isn't like, again, I've heard that these laws are about to change, or there are some like gaps or like pitfalls in the legislation. I don't know exactly how it works. I'm not a legal expert. I don't know exactly. But as far as I know, if it's sold here, European consumer laws are some of the strictest in the world. No matter what, when it comes to safety, when it comes to these kind of things as well. So as far as I know, if you're in the European Union, and I think the UK still as well, I don't think Brexit messed up that completely. It messed up a lot of other things, but not that. Any product we buy and that is sold here has to be cruelty-free. So by default, if I can get it from an EU retailer, it's going to be cruelty-free. So if I buy La Roche-Posay from my local drugstore, it's cruelty-free, even though La Roche-Posay is very often not listed as a cruelty-free brand. But that's why I come back to my point about China. So very often, brands are not listed as cruelty-free because they sell in China. Now, and there's a reason why I have a problem with this. I'm not sure if I'm right. I have no way of fact-checking whether I'm right. But I kind of feel, so Chinese law, apparently, this is why, if a product is produced outside of China, in order for it to be sold in China, it has to be tested on animals. That's the law. That's what I've been told, that's what the law is. But here's the thing. If your brand manufactures the product in China and you sell it in China, you no longer have to test it on animals, because then Chinese law says, well, we are sure that because you produce it in our country that it meets all of our standards. So if you produce a product in Italy and try to sell it in China, it gets tested on animals. I'm not sure how often or whether that's just once when it's a new product. I have no clue, but that's what I know. You produce it in Italy, you want to sell it in China, it needs to be tested. If you take the exact same product, but you manufacture it in China, you don't have to go through the testing. So to me, the way I've read into it is that this is just a ploy from the Chinese government to try and get brands to manufacture makeup in Chinese factories. Meaning that you're taking labor away from the US, Italy, wherever, there's a couple of places in the world where they produce quite a lot of makeup. So you're taking labor away and you're putting it in China because everybody says, ooh, but oh, the animals, oh, the poor animals. It's a marketing strategy. at least that's what I'm saying, like that's what I've read into it. So when people were saying, but oh, now Wet n Wild and Elf are suddenly sold in China, that was a big thing a couple of years ago when people, it hadn't been announced anywhere and people felt very duped. Like, this is one of my favorite drugstore brands and now I can't buy them anymore because they're no longer cruelty free. Are they? Because if that makeup was manufactured in China to begin with, then it is labeled as cruelty free. And I'm not sure if you know anything about like labor laws and human rights and anything else regarding China, but they're not exactly a country that's known for good work ethics. And I'm putting it mildly. I mean, there was just a Channel 4 documentary about people who make clothing for Shein. I don't know, but China does not exactly have a good reputation for having the best working environment. So to then have a rule in place that has people pushing for cruelty-free makeup, I think you might actually be doing more harm than good. At least, again, that's what I've read into it. And I've always found that really weird, that people go like, oh, I won't buy from... What matters is if the product you buy is cruelty-free. Whether the brand chooses to sell in a different territory. Why? And especially if you look at the bigger picture, because if that brand, because Charlotte Tilbury is a brand that did not used to be cruelty-free, and on their socials, I think it's been more than a year ago, all of a sudden there was this announcement, we are now Leaping Bunny approved. I was like, okay, so Charlotte Tilbury has found a manufacturer in China. Because I have not heard that they are no longer being sold in China. Maybe they have, but there are brands who choose not to sell in China so they can be cruelty-free. But what you also see brands doing nowadays is that they just move their manufacturing process for Chinese products for the Chinese market, maybe. Maybe they only go that far, or maybe they also now produce makeup for the US or the EU market in China. I don't know about that. I don't know enough about those things, but just think of what you're doing. So by our like trying to like create a better world for the animals, we're actually putting people in harm's way across the globe. That's the way I feel about it. And I'm like, unless China is ramping up their, and finally letting, people really see what's going on in their manufacturing process, but they're being more closed off as time goes on. It's almost as if the entire pandemic situation has only sped up the process of withdrawing from global markets completely. Like, it's so untransparent what's going on in that country that I cannot rightly say, like, okay, is that really what happens? Is that then a reason for me to stop buying a product? If I know that if I buy that product, like if I go to my Charlotte Tilbury counter here in my town, the product I'm buying is cruelty-free, it's produced in Italy. I feel pretty good about that. I don't know about you, but where you would stand, but I just find this obsession with cruelty-free makeup a little bit weird. So that's one of the reasons, my major reason for not putting it very big up on a billboard here on the channel, go like, this channel is cruelty free, because I feel there are so many implications that I know too little about and that I just don't have an overview on, because it's just all closed off and it's something that you as a single consumer cannot know anything about. I just want to be very careful. And if I then promote a brand as, oh, it's great and they're cruelty free, and because that's the language you hear. Like, I'm buying this because it's cruelty free, but is it really cruelty free? I don't know. And that brings me, nice really bridge, to my next topic, which is greenwashing. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of greenwashing going on in the world, and that's another reason why I don't want to use the kind of language where I promote a brand and say like, they're doing a really great job. I don't know. I don't stand next to that factory figuring out whether they are producing everything in a fair, sustainable way. So labels like cruelty-free, clean, sustainable, better for you. I am very, very skeptical personally when I hear any brand saying anything like that, because there's just very often no way to check. Like, there's just no way to check. I mean, there are websites that keep track of these things, and these people don't even have all the facts. And they kind of do this for a living. So then who am I to let my viewers know, hey, this is a good brand to try because they're cruelty-free? Well, that's what the brand claims to be, yeah. But what's going on behind the scenes? Are they actually? Maybe I'm just being way too cynical here and skeptical of everything going on. And then this brings me to a topic I actually discussed over the summertime. I did a video all about problematic makeup brands and why, you know, you have to be very careful until you label something as problematic. And I touched upon it there as well. Like, brands are not here to be your friend. They're here to make a buck. They're here to make money, and they will do anything in their power to get you to spend your money on them. And since, especially in recent years, there's this push to more sustainability and people finding this very important, myself included, but what you see is that very often brands will just claim to do certain things as a marketing strategy. But then when people really start to scrutinize what they're actually doing for the world, it's little to nothing. Like, a lot of, especially in the fashion industry, I know most about that because that's been researched a lot more. But in the clothing industry, for instance, brands like Zara and H&M, they now have these like programs and more sustainable items, and they will like let you know where things are from. But the main improvement they've made is that they now use organic cotton rather than regular cotton. And they're still paying people bad wages, and the entire production chain is still as polluting as with the regular cotton. So has anything really changed? Or are we just, you know, putting up a show that everybody feels better when they buy these products? And that's one of the reasons why I'm like, you know, if it's not, is this just a marketing ploy? And that's why I don't want to make it part of my own marketing, because whenever I talk about a brand, I would have to figure out, like, for every brand I talk about, are they really doing a good job? I mean, take Essence and Catrice. I talk about them a lot. All their products are vegan. All their products are cruelty-free. So that makes you think, like, great. But at the same time, I always feel bad because they release a completely new collection every 6 months. And then they do regular limited editions as well. I mean, it's great content for the channel. Everybody clicks on it, wants to watch it. And whenever a new thing is announced, I already get messages from people like, hey, are you reviewing this? Because people want to know my thoughts, because I have a history of reviewing their products. But at the same time, I'm like, wait, you're cruelty-free, you're vegan, but then you do put out so much new makeup and you discontinue lines after 6 months for absolutely no reason. So that's another reason why I just cannot comfortably claim that this channel is cruelty-free. Yeah, I can buy from cruelty-free brands, but like I already mentioned, the minute I buy something within the European Union, it's cruelty-free. So by default, 90% of everything I have, unless I've imported it from outside of the EU, there's a chance it may not, but most of the indie brands I shop from are cruelty-free and vegan. So I think 95% of my collection is already cruelty-free. They just are. Save for like a few brands that are still in there that may also be selling in China. But if I've bought the product myself in the European, it's cruelty-free. Why would I have to put it up on the billboard? Why would I have to make that part of my identity? I don't really see a point, especially because I cannot check whether the claims that brands make and what's on these websites, whether that's actually true. And then what definition of cruelty-free do they use? I just find it so, I find it a non-issue, as in you just need to do the best you can possibly do. And that brings me actually to my final point here, because I think that it also, this focus on like, you know, sustainability and all that, it's also very elite. Like it's steeped in elitism. Like, I'm doing a better job for the world than you do, which I'm sure a lot of channels don't mean it that way. But we should not forget, and this is another video I did over the summertime, where I talked about, you know, voting with your dollar and how that may not be as effective as you think it may be. But it's just not attainable for everyone. So to then promote it on my channel as this is something you have to do as well, that's something I don't feel comfortable with, because I don't know what kind of budget you have. I don't know, and very often if things are clean or whatever, it's very often going to be much more expensive than other products. I mean, cruelty-free products can also be found at the drugstore, but it is a fact that quite a lot of drugstore makeup is by default not cruelty-free. Cruelty-free was really a label that started happening more so in more expensive brands. So is it then something people can do, that they can achieve? I want you to just find good recommendations for good makeup products that are going to work for you. That's my main spiel. I mean, if it's cruelty-free, added bonus. But I don't necessarily focus on that, because I could actually be promoting something, making it very sort of exclusive, like an exclusive club of things that you can actually attain. I very much struggle myself sometimes getting a hold of brands. So just because something's cruelty-free doesn't mean that everybody can buy it. It's not as easily accessible, perhaps. So for instance, I would love to try a brand like Merit. I hear so many people talking about they're clean, they're cruelty-free. It's like, this is like this hyped up brand. I can't buy it. The only place I can even have a look at the products is on their official website, and they don't ship internationally. So I'm stuck. And speaking of shipping internationally, there are just so many other issues other than things being cruelty-free, that a brand might be cruelty-free, but then this happens, or then there's this. So it says nothing about how they pay their workers or whether they are respecting worker rights. It says nothing about diversity within their team of people who run the brand. It says nothing about like available shade ranges or sizes. This is one of the things that irks me the most about, you know, people talking about sustainable and like better fashion choices. Very often the brands that are labeled as sustainable are much more expensive, and in terms of size inclusivity, I cannot shop from them. My boobs are too big. Like, it won't fit into their tops. And I'm very short. I'm only 5 feet tall. I cannot buy pants from those brands because they're gonna be like, you know, this much too long for me. So I also just like having options where I can actually find something that works for me. And that's what I find so much more important. Another thing I already talked about is if you have sensitive skin. A lot of the brands that are clean, they may not have parabens in, but sometimes they do have a lot of fragrance in to mask how these natural ingredients come together. I remember, again, years ago, great moisturizer from the German drugstore, but the scent, oh my word, it was completely unscented. But what do you get if you put certain ingredients together and you don't flavor it with anything? It's almost a bit like cooking. It's just going to taste bland. It smelled like rotten cardboard. So I understand why some brands have to put fragrance in, and especially in all natural products, because the scents often don't go together, and then they need to put something in there to mask the fact that it's not gonna smell very nice. So especially like clean products, and if they're cruelty-free, like there's a whole thing behind it. And I already mentioned as well that, you know, ease of use and being able to get things is so much more important, because I don't understand why I would have to have something shipped halfway across the globe because it's cruelty-free. You see people doing this with sustainable fashion, right? Oh, this is a sustainable brand, I'll import it from the US. And you're like, it kind of defeats the point. So, because, you know, it has to travel so many miles, so you're trying to do something for the planet, and by doing something for the planet, you actually do something that harms the planet. So that brings me back to what I was mentioning when I discussed the issue of China in this entire in this entire cruelty-free thing. To me, it just seems Like instead of, like we're trying to do something better and we can give ourselves a tap on the shoulder, like, ooh, my brand is cruelty, my channel is cruelty free, or I only buy cruelty free makeup. But are you actually doing something that is useful for the planet? I think if you walk around your neighborhood with like one of those like squeezy things to pick up garbage, that it will do more for the planet than you buying cruelty free makeup. But that's just me. So maybe I'm being a bit salty here. I'm terribly sorry if this is you, if you feel very passionate about cruelty-free makeup. But where I'm coming from, I just want to buy and try what I think might work for me. Most of what I try and buy is already cruelty-free. A big chunk of my channel is built around Essence and Catrice. They are cruelty-free vegan brands. So we're already, like, I'm pretty well underway there. But it's just not a label I want to put on my channel, because there are so many things that just make me uncomfortable to make it part of my branding and to like put it out there and go like, this channel is cruelty free. I only focus on cruelty free makeup, because as we've seen in the past, brands can start off being cruelty free and then not be cruelty free because they start selling in China, or the other way around might happen. So I just think that putting that sort of limitation on it is very sort of forced. And as I already mentioned as well, I don't think you're actually doing anything of value. And to me, it's just something that people do to make themselves feel good. And then I'm like, I don't have the solution here. I cannot tell you what to do instead. But I think that, yeah, we definitely need to be a bit more mindful of labeling things. And it just feels like an easy way out, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I wanted to chat with you today. Leave a comment down below to let me know how you feel about cruelty-free makeup. I would love to know. I'm pretty sure there are people with differing opinions here. Keep it respectful, but you guys managed to do that every video I've done like this so far. So I have really, really good hopes here that you're going to be able to do that as well. And then for now, I hope you'd like to stay tuned for the other videos that will be going live on this channel in the next couple of weeks. I do lots more content every single week, so I hope you'd like to stay tuned, and I hope to see you in my video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.